Hey everybody, welcome to the eLounge. Today we have Dr. LaBelle with us, and she is going to be talking about test anxiety. So we should get some useful information and some good tools to control that. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Dr. LaBelle.
Thank you. Super excited to be here. I've done these a couple times and it's always fun. So test anxiety is a huge thing, especially as we approach midterms and when we think about final season. But also, this can come up for us anytime. So I see it as even more general than specific to tests, but for those of us who especially struggle in that sort of performance kind of role, this is definitely for you. So let's get going. So I have a couple slides here. Test anxiety is very complicated, and so I want to say that I may talk about it in a way like, oh, these strategies will be for you, that make it super simple. And I want to just say that while the strategies may be simple, they are very difficult to apply, but they can be applied in such a way that really help you out. So if it seems too simple, give it a try anyway, because it might actually be more helpful than you imagine that it could be. Okay? So with all that being said, let's talk a little bit about the relationship between stress and performance, because that's what we're talking about here. So in this slide, you can see that there's actually a point where stress is actually helpful. I know we don't often think of stress in that way. I think stress gets a bad rap sometimes. But according to this curve, there is a point at which stress is leading to our most peak performance, or where we're at our best and most competent place to ace that test or to write the best paper. It's whenever we get kind of in that red zone of distress that things begin to maybe turn around on us. Things begin to get shut down and our mind goes blank. Okay? And so I want to show you this to say stress is important for success, but every one of us has a different peak zone. And so I want you to think about a time when you performed, maybe it was a sports thing, maybe it was on a test, maybe it was on a speech, when you felt that you were at your best. It was anxiety-provoking maybe, it was stressful, but it wasn't to the place where you felt frozen or stuck or your mind went blank. That's probably going to be about the point of your eustress or peak performance stress. We all have one. I may or may not be in mine right now. Just kidding. Okay, so we all have an optimum level of stress. Got it. So the next thing that we're going to be talking about is perhaps how we contribute to going over that peak into the distress zone. Okay, distress being fatigue, distraction, exhaustion, all of those things that impede our performance. And that's called self-talk. And again, self-talk, we've all heard of it, and we're like, oh yeah, I know what that means. I don't need a lesson in that. The thing is that most of us do. And so that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about today, is how does our self-talk impact the way that we do things, and maybe the success of doing things, how we feel about how we did, and is it accurate? Okay? So self-talk is very much that idea of the way that we talk to ourselves. And is it a supportive voice? Does it put us down? Does it acknowledge our strengths? Or does it identify and kind of focus on the flaws? Because usually our self-talk, we're our own worst critic, right? Our own self-talk tends to be on that negative end. And if that kind of talk is happening during an exam or a presentation, then it's going to impact our performance, says this curve. Okay, it's going to pull us over that ledge versus keeping us in that peak zone where we are at optimum in terms of what we remember, the way that we perform, and our sense of confidence. So let's look at just this next slide. So self-talk is half the battle. Let's look at, on the left side, there is anxiety self-talk. I never do well. This is too hard for me. I'm going to fail. I'm an idiot. Okay, so we start calling ourselves names in such a way that we would probably never call our friends. Just saying. Everyone is doing better than I am. If I didn't know that answer, I won't know the others. Okay? My entire future is riding on this. My heart is beating fast. I'm going to have a panic attack. Okay? So some of the reasons that those statements are considered on the anxiety self-talk side is that it speaks in sort of absolutes. I never do well. Everyone is doing better than me. My entire future is riding on this. The more accurate thing is my grade in this class may be riding on this, but my future is probably still intact if I don't, make an A on this biology test. I know biology was one that caused me test anxiety. So other things that kind of mark these statements as on the anxiety self-talk side is prediction. I'm going to fail. This is too hard for me. Okay. I'm going to have a panic attack, or I'm panicking. I'm going to panic. Okay. I already mentioned the name calling. But the prediction of I won't know the other answers. I don't know this one. So sort of jumping to conclusions. All right. So those are really common patterns of thinking that we engage in when we think about how our self-talk impacts us in a moment of test performance. Okay. So if we look at the facilitative self-talk side, what that means is, how am I talking to myself in a way that's actually going to facilitate my success, facilitate my ability to do the best that I'm going to be able to do, right? If you cram the night before, you may not be able to do well, because we all know that that's not the most effective study strategy. But if you talk yourself into knowing that you're going to fail, chances are you probably will, because you're going to forget things, your mind's going to be going blank, and you're not going to be able to have the confidence to say, but you know what, maybe I can get a context clue from another question later and come back to that one, because we have already given up. Okay? If we can sort of transform our anxiety self-talk into facilitative self-talk, then we are going to be more successful than we would if we didn't do that. It may not take away all the anxiety, but remember, we don't want to, because some anxiety is necessary to take it seriously, to study hard, and to be able to perform at our peak performance. So when we think about facilitative self-talk, we want to be accurate. Not hearts, flowers, and rainbows, head in the clouds, too positive. We want to be accurate, realistic, and fact-based. Okay? So I never do well is the anxiety self-talk. Perhaps an alternative, more facilitative self-talk statement might be to say, sometimes I struggle. That's a fact, or that's real, that's accurate. But I've also prepared really hard for this, and I can do it. Okay? So acknowledging what you've done to maybe overcome what you know about yourself in terms of that struggle. Okay? So then I'm going to fail, I'm such an idiot. So that name-calling prediction place. An alternative to that one would be, we don't know, we can't predict the outcome. Let's not focus on pass or fail right now. Let's just focus on putting what I know into this paper, answering that test question. And so that can take some of the pressure off of the prediction and the name calling. Okay. Let's see, everyone is doing better than I am. It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. More importantly, you don't know how everyone else is doing. And I say it in that voice because sometimes I talk to myself that way, because I'll have this everyone, all, never, always kind of talk. And I'll say, hold on. I say, self, pump the brakes. I don't know what everybody else is doing or thinking or feeling. So it's not fair for me to say definitively that everybody else is X, Y, and Z. I can only know about me in this moment, and what I know is that I studied really hard, that I prepared in a way that wasn't cramming. I know that. And what I can control is when a question about Freud, psychology nerd over here, when a question about Freud comes up, I'm probably going to be able to answer that because I know it well. So it's this idea of pumping yourself up instead of deflating your own tires. Okay. Other things, so things, facilitative statements. I like this one a lot. My heart is beating fast, I'm panicking, or I'm going to have a panic attack. I work a lot with folks with anxiety. It's sort of maybe a little special interest area. And there is this idea called misattribution of symptoms. And so what that means is that oftentimes, if I walk up the stairs quickly, I'm going to be out of breath. I was out of breath walking over here. But that doesn't mean that I'm panicking, even though some of those symptoms are very similar. Being out of breath, maybe being a little hot, a little clammy, my heart racing. Okay? It may mean I'm a little bit nervous or that I've walked up a flight of stairs or two, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm panicking. Okay? So when we can not predict what's going to happen and also be realistic about what's happening, we're able to manage that anxiety better, because anxiety is normal and we need some, right? We've been over that. So one thing that I did when I came in here and sat down is I was like, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath, pull it all the way down to my belly instead of my chest. And I said, you're fine. You walked over here quickly because you were late, and that's all this is. And so I need a little bit of anxiety to be intentional and thoughtful and to be able to give you something that's useful, but it doesn't mean I'm panicking. Okay? So as I talk through about what a facilitative self-talk statement is and how to do that in response to some of our anxiety self-talk, I also want to point out that we would never say the things that we say to ourselves, to our friend, to our younger sibling, maybe to them, but not if they're super young. Or we just don't say that to other people. So what makes it okay that we say that to ourselves? So one of the things that I like to and to have some of my the people that I work with do is envision somebody that they really care about. That may be a younger sibling that they're wanting to set a good example for, or a really close friend that has supported them through hard times. And so I envision their face and envision them having a similar struggle. What would you say? Oftentimes what they would say is something very kind, very supportive, and very encouraging. And so if we can only give ourselves just a bit of that, then we might be able to curtail the effects of our negative self-talk on things like performance in school, performance at work, performance in sports. Yeah. Okay. So let's see, what else do I have next? So that's a bit about self-talk. I also wanted to offer some other tips related to studying and how to maybe motivate yourself despite maybe this increase in anxiety or this anxiety that's towards the red zone. Some of these strategies may help take you back to from the red to that blue peak zone. Okay, so there's this thing called contingency management. What contingency management is all about is how am I going to reward myself for being intentional and working really hard. Okay, so setting up little rewards to make studying more enjoyable, if that's possible, of course. But most importantly, setting up these rewards to make studying more effective. Okay, so I remember in grad school, one of the things that I would do is I would study for a little while, and I could usually tolerate about an hour to an hour and a half of focus before I would start to drift. So that would be my cutoff point. And then I would watch a half hour. I had The Best of Friends on DVD, and I would watch a half-hour episode. So it was like for every hour and a half that I was working, I got 30 minutes of just being able to giggle at Friends because it's one of my favorites. Other people maybe have a shorter threshold for studying, not something to get down about, but just to acknowledge. Let's work with ourselves rather than against. So maybe if you're one of those people who need shorter chunks of time, like 30 minutes, then you get to study, you get to kind of help yourself study for 30 minutes and then say, okay, I'm not going to be, and that's not checking your phone or looking at Facebook or reading the same sentence 5 times. It's, okay, it's studying and it's feeling productive. And then you get 10 minutes of Facebook time or, you know, Fallout time or texting, responding to whatever's coming your way. Okay. Otherwise, turn off the alarms that tell you that you have an incoming message. Turn off, you know, the vibration on the phone, and just let that time be really focused on studying, and then you get to have that reward. Maybe you are able to, when you finish that paper, then I know another treat that I like to do is I get froyo. Okay, that's a treat, that's a special, that's a reward. Another thing that people like to do are things like maybe you study for 45 minutes and you get 15 minutes to work on one of those really pretty ornate adult coloring pages. Okay, that's maybe a reward to kind of like decompress from everything that you've just put in. So thinking about things within your means. It doesn't have to be something you go out and get or buy. It can be that you get to paint your fingernails. Okay, so painting fingernails and letting that dry, that's 15 to 20 minutes. That can be one of your breaks. Study for another 45 minutes and you paint your toes. Okay, things like that that are within our means, financially and time, can just help you feel more open and less kind of bummed out by the fact that you have to study. It can help you feel like, ooh, what can I do for myself or give myself that makes this feel more exciting than it typically is. The other tip that I strongly recommend for folks, especially before an exam, is consider relaxing for the half hour before the test. I'm guilty of this too, but we sometimes feel the need to cram as much as we can in that last 30 minutes, that last hour, that last 15 minutes. And what can happen actually is that as we cram and we're like, oh no, I can't remember that, or I don't remember looking at that last night, or we can start to begin to push the play button on that negative self-talk, on that anxiety self-talk. And that can actually cause more anxiety symptoms, physiologically and mentally and emotionally, which can make us go over the ledge towards that red zone of distress in our stress performance curve. So let yourself know you know as much as you will, and you don't have to know it all, you just have to know enough. And the likelihood that you do, based on your plan for studying and sticking to it and rewarding yourself as you went, that's all you can know at this point. So maybe you don't go into the classroom just yet. You soak up a few more drops of the sunshine that we've been having, or the nice breeze, or kind of admiring the broad pears as they're blooming, or the budding trees, things like that. Maybe you talk to a friend about anything other than the exam, or anything too stressful, because we don't want that going into the exam either. You talk to a friend about maybe your plans for the weekend, or an upcoming trip, or an article that you read on BuzzFeed that was super fun. Okay. Avoid at all costs being near others, and potentially they may be friends too, who stir up self-doubt. You know you've been in those situations where you're preparing for an exam and you're sort of cramming those last few things before, and you're already starting to feel a little nervous, and then somebody throws a word out like, I don't know, photosynthesis, and you're like, what? This is a psychology class. How is there a photosynthesis involved here? And then that stirs up that self-doubt, and that anxiety self-talk may begin. So avoid being near others who are going to promote that for you, and if you know yourself and you know that you're prone to that, stay outside of the classroom, and don't go in until maybe 5 minutes before, where you get your things out and prepared to begin. Okay? And then another strategy that I work a lot with is pairing relaxation and relaxation strategies while you study and before the exam. Can't go into it too much today, but it's really fascinating to think that our bodies cannot be both anxious and relaxed at the same time. It's impossible, because it's two different systems at play. When one's activated, the other's not. When the other activates, the other one goes down. Okay? So if we can study in a relaxed place and help ourselves feel more relaxed during the exam, we're probably going to be more able to remember what it is that we actually studied. So things that I recommend people doing to be relaxed is definitely being aware of your body. So I know that I like to carry my anxiety, I don't like to, but I do, carry my anxiety here. And there are times when I'm at my desk typing and I'm like feeling so tense, and I've been like this for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then I'm like, okay, let me take my shoulders back down, take a deep breath, and kind of sit here for a minute while I decompress, and then go back to what I was doing. And then as my shoulders creep up, I do that same thing, maybe 15 or 20 minutes later. Okay, so just trying to relax a little bit. I have written here imagery exercise, and so what that means is pairing this image that's fun and your own and special and unique to you with a situation or the image of taking an exam. And so what that does is it pairs the two, and it helps you be more relaxed during that exam than when you're not. So I was hoping that maybe we can do a little bit of that now. So when you listen to this, or if anybody's listening now, what I want you to do is maybe just kind of de-stress your shoulders if that's where you're holding tension. Sort of sit comfortably in your chair as much as you can, and I want you to close your eyes. And the cool thing is that I can't see you, so I'm not watching you. Okay? So close your eyes, and I want you to think of a place that you love. Maybe it's a combo of a couple places you love. Okay? So I want you to think of all of the sensory details there. What do you hear when you're there? When you imagine this place or this combo of places in your mind? What do you smell? Okay. Maybe you smell the salt in the air from the ocean, or you smell green trees and leaves blooming in spring. Okay. Maybe you smell cinnamon or like chocolate chip cookies baking in the oven. And it's a really comforting scent. Okay. I want you to think about what you feel under your feet as you walk through there. If you reach your hand out to touch something, is it a smooth leaf, or is it just open air and breeze? Maybe you're touching sand. Okay. Maybe you are kneading dough or stirring brownie mix, or whatever it is that you enjoy doing that's super relaxing. Okay. Think of what you feel emotionally. You feel content and satisfied, comfortable and safe. Okay? And so continue walking through this image that you've created. So mine is often a combo of beach and mountain, if that's possible. But I think about the breeze blowing and it being warm enough outside to wear shorts, but the breeze cool enough to need a long sleeve t-shirt. And I think about hearing the ocean in the distance, even though it's maybe not right there. So that really soothing ocean wave. I see things like flowers and green. I see things like birds and really safe animals like deer and raccoons. I also hear the grass and the leaves blowing in the breeze. More things that I smell, things like lavender or the honeysuckles. Okay, so it may not be a real place, but maybe it's this combo of places that make you just feel super relaxed. That even as I've been describing my sort of relaxing image, I feel more relaxed in my shoulders and also in my feet, which were I was clenching or kind of crunching on my toes in my shoes earlier. And so think about that. Give yourself a chance to just relax a little bit and go back to studying. If you feel yourself getting tense again, go back to that. Same with the exam. Be in this image for a little while. You don't have to be laid back in your chair with your eyes closed, or you can be. But we can go, that's the power of our minds, is we can go there anytime. And so let your body relax with this image and then go back to your exam. If you feel yourself getting tense or feeling some anxiety, self-talk come back up again, then what you can do is go back to that place, think of the image, smell your favorite smell. So take a big whiff of the rose bushes or the cookies that are baking or whatever it is, and then go back to your exam. And it may be this process of soothing yourself and working, but you will be able to do that more effectively in your exam because you also did that while you're studying. So significant strategy with that, if we can really work to pair that relaxation with studying or taking the exam. I think so there's this handout here. So this has a little bit of just introduction, which is exactly what I talked about when I mentioned this, and this is just a little copy-pasted part of the top of this. But I wanted to offer you this information. And think about writing down your own anxiety self-talk statements and writing down excitement or facilitative self-talk statements in response so that you can be that supportive person to yourself the way that you would be to your neighbor or to your friend. And that way that if you write them down and think about what typically comes to mind, you'll be more prepared during the exam to use them. Okay. So I think, there's the rest of it. So it even offers you some spaces where you can write your own and then write a facilitated self-talk statement. And then at the bottom of it is the contact information for the counseling center. Test anxiety is not an uncommon thing, and if this is something that really gets in the way of your academic success, I invite anybody to come over to the counseling center to work on decreasing anxiety and improving your strategies for coping during tests and whatnot so that you can reach your full potential in terms of academic success. So that's my shameless plug about the counseling center. And I know that lots of folks who are viewing this are probably distance ed or online students. And for some of you, it may be difficult to get to the counseling center, especially if you're far away from Denton or Dallas, or Houston. But if you're close enough and would want to engage any kind of counseling services, you are absolutely more welcome to. You don't have to be an on-campus student to use on-campus services. So something to keep in mind. Just want to let you know that. Sometimes people don't always know that you could still come for therapy if you are an online student. And that's all. That's all I have. I think, I don't know if there are any questions or if I need to turn this off so that we do the next steps.
Thank you, Dr. Lavelle. That was really, really helpful, and there were some awesome tips in there. I have a quick question. It seems like a lot, or some of these tips can be put towards maybe presentation anxiety. So do you have a couple of methods that you could share for someone who maybe is about to do a presentation and then all of a sudden they feel their heart starting to beat faster or their breathing is in control? Do you have any tips on how to control that right before giving a presentation?
Yes. Oh, am I here? Yeah, there I am. Can I be heard and everything?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so yes, so these can absolutely be applied to presentations. But earlier I mentioned this idea of maybe misattributing some of the physiological symptoms to anxiety or panic versus just real life, I just ran up a flight of stairs or I just ran across campus. And so one of the things that you can do is, instead of kind of automatically going to this place of, oh God, I'm having a panic attack or I'm panicking, you might be able to say, what am I actually feeling? So you may be able to say, I'm having maybe a little sweaty, a little clammy, a little rapid heart rate, maybe I feel a little sick to my stomach, not a very common symptom of anxiety. And so do that inventory and say, and instead of saying, I'm going to panic and not be able to do my presentation, that anxiety self-talk statement, what you can also think about is, how can I soothe myself? How can I say, yeah, you're anxious. We know that some anxiety is normal to get through in that peak performance. Just because we have some of those physical symptoms doesn't mean that we're crossing over into that red zone of distress. So talking yourself through that can be really helpful. Saying things like, I prepared really well for this. Okay? If you didn't prepare and you're nervous, it makes sense that you might be. But even then, you probably know more than you think if you've gone to class or read the text. You may be able to talk about more than you give yourself credit for. And I don't know if anybody's been in that situation where you just start talking about something that you learned about and you're like, oh, well then there's this and then there's that, and you sort of amaze yourself with what you know. Most of us can do that. And so even if you didn't prepare super well, being able to say, this is a topic I'm really interested in, or this is a topic I'm really passionate about, or I chose this topic because of this reason. And I may not have prepared well enough, but I do have this experience that I can speak from. So maybe you have your presentation, and I know that these are often psychology topics because that's my frame of reference, but maybe you have a sibling or a cousin who is on the autism spectrum, and so your presentation is about autism. You can speak about some of the symptoms that maybe you've seen or heard your family discuss, and that gives you more knowledge than maybe what you give yourself credit for knowing, even though you may not have read or prepared as much as you could have. Other tips for presentation specifically is, if for those of us who have a tendency to break out in hives, not an uncommon thing, not a reason to be embarrassed, but just be intentional. Instead of choosing maybe like more of a scoop neck or a V-neck, maybe you choose a collared shirt or you wear a scarf. That way you don't have to worry about people seeing it, because that can come up for this too whenever we feel them coming on. You can say, oh no, I'm breaking out in hives. Just prepare in such a way that you don't have to worry about that. Or I know that for me, sometimes whenever I get nervous, my hands shake. And so I'm intentional to not hold my hands out, or maybe I'm holding something like a pen and sort of twisting on it, or I'm holding my notes in front of me or something like that, and that way I don't have to worry about people seeing that. Not a clicky pen, because you don't want to be doing that while you're talking, but I think about a pen that kind of twists a little bit, and so I may hold it and just twist it a little bit. It doesn't make a noise, it's not terribly distracting, but it helps sort of me not have to worry about fidgeting or touching my face or my hands shaking. Okay, so that's something that you can think about on how to harness that energy instead of working with it, instead of working against it. I think a lot of these strategies will apply. I believe that the way that we think about things and the way that we think about ourselves and our abilities is going to significantly impact our capacity to do a good job, to perform the way that we want to. Other questions?
Thank you. That was very helpful. We're not having any other questions right now, but thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and we really enjoyed it. If you are watching this as a recording, thank you, and we really encourage you to utilize the TWU Counseling Center. Don't hesitate to get in touch with them if you need more help with anxiety, or if you have any other issues coming on. Check out their website on the TWU website and check out what services they have to offer you. Thank you, everybody, for watching this and joining us. Thank you, Dr. Lavelle, and y'all have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.